In 1971, the Perrone family moved to an 18th century farmhouse in Rhode Island. It was to be the start of a new life. After only a few nights, Mrs. Perrone awoke to the specter of an old woman hung by the neck from her bedroom ceiling. Over the next few weeks, strange sounds emanated. With help of paranormal investigators, it was discovered that a witch practicing in the 18th century had sacrificed her own child to Satan, opened the house to the devil, and then hung herself. The Perrones believed that the witch's ghost, as well as a myriad of demons and the ghosts of further suicides on the property, were haunting them. One of the daughters still maintains that the story is completely true, and that her mother even became possessed at one point. She says, "The only time I was truly terrified in the house was the night I thought I saw my mother die. She spoke in a voice we had never heard before, and a power not of this world threw her 20 feet into another room." In 1778, an English tailor named George Lukens claimed to be possessed. The man would often sing in a voice and language that was not his own. Finally, neighbors, concerned by his increasingly frightening behavior, reached out to the church to help him. He was sent to a hospital for over 20 months, but doctors couldn't help him. His caregivers discharged him, even more convinced that his confliction was demonic in nature. During his possession, a very violent Lukens reportedly claimed that he was the devil, barked like a dog, and sang hymns backwards. In 1778, after Lukens claimed to be possessed by 7 demons that could only be driven out by 7 clergymen, the church got involved. 7 priests assembled at Temple Church, where they performed an exorcism. When the ceremony was over, priests claimed that the man had been delivered from the demons who possessed him, and Lukens exclaimed, "Blessed Jesus!" He then praised God, recited the Lord's Prayer, and thanked the priests. Robert the doll is the ultimate child's nightmare. According to the story, the doll was given to young Eugene Otto, the son of 2 artists in Key West, Florida, at the end of the 19th century. The gift giver was a young Jamaican witch who was hired by the Ottos to be Eugene's nanny. The Ottos began hearing Eugene talking to the doll in his room and another voice answering. A few weeks later, he began screaming in the night that Robert was trying to kill him. Neighbors reported seeing the doll moving in the windows of the house. When Eugene grew up, he inherited his parents' house and kept Robert the doll close by. The doll continued to terrify visitors, although Eugene seemed to have a strange connection with it. After Eugene died in 1972, the doll haunted the new owners of the house for a few years before being placed in a museum in Key West. An antiques dealer named Kevin Mannis purchased an old wine cabinet at an estate sale in 2000. The wooden box came with a story. It originally belonged to the grandmother of the estate owner, who kept it hidden away so that nobody could open it. She called it a debuk box. Debuks are spirits in Jewish folklore that latch themselves onto people and objects, bringing bad luck, misery, and death. After leaving the box at his office, he received a hysterical call from his secretary. Someone or something was shouting and smashing things in his office. When he returned to the scene, he found that the light bulbs in the office had been broken and his secretary was curled up in a corner sobbing. He proceeded to give the wine box to his mother as a gift, and she immediately suffered a stroke. After attempting to sell or give away the box several more times, he took to keeping it in his own house. Slowly, he started to go crazy. He began seeing shadows out of the corners of his eyes. He would awake in the middle of the night feeling like someone was breathing on his neck, and his home became filled with the stench of cat urine and jasmine flowers. Finally, he posted the box on eBay with a story behind it, asking for someone with experience in demonology to take it. It was purchased by a student who ended up posting it on eBay again after he began experiencing the same inexplicable occurrences. The debuk box is currently owned by Jason Haxton, a museum curator who collects paranormal curiosities. Bob Larson is a televangelist who claims to have exorcised more than 1,500 demons, many of them on live TV. In 2006, he performed what might be the most controversial exorcism to date. He drove the homosexual demon out of a gay man. He shouted at a self-proclaimed homosexual and alleges to have evicted the demon that brought the curse of homosexuality. This idea of gay exorcism isn't confined to one church. A similar story took place in Connecticut in 2009. A 16-year-old boy was filmed thrashing about on the floor while members of the church congregation shouted commands, and other members held him to the ground. Larson has performed multiple gay exorcisms, as well as exorcisms for bastard demons and women who have illegitimate children. He is also the author of several books on the influence of Satan in modern rock music. In 1976, the people of New York City were terrorized by a serial killer known as Son of Sam. For more than a year, the killer led police on a wild goose chase, leaving behind taunting notes of the crime scenes. 6 people were killed and 7 others severely wounded in the Summer of Sam. When the killer was finally apprehended, he was identified as David Berkowitz. According to Berkowitz, Sam was the demon who had possessed his neighbor's dog. He claimed the dog spoke to him and told him when to kill someone. He was sentenced to 6 life sentences, and in the mid-1990s he issued an amendment to his confession, claiming that he had indeed been a member of a satanic cult that had orchestrated the incidents as part of a ritual murder. Voodoo is Haiti's official religion, which is sometimes practiced right alongside Catholicism. In Voodoo, there's a pantheon of about 80 spirits called Iowa or Iowa. During a ceremony, practitioners open themselves mentally and spiritually to let any one of the Iowa take over their body. If the spirits aren't fed regularly, they will become weak. While possessed, a person might give a warning about the future or offer advice to someone in need. The rituals serve to feed the spirits with energy, often drawn from the person who becomes possessed, though other times energy can be sent through the pounding of a drum, ritualistic dancing, or an animal sacrifice. In 2008, Dr. Richard Gallagher was given a unique opportunity. He was asked by a bishop to provide a psychiatric evaluation of a woman who claimed to be attacked by demons. His experiences, which he published in the New Oxford Review, were startling. During the evaluation, she would go into a brief trance, followed by a rage during which she would begin shouting at Gallagher and the attending priest. Objects fell off the shelves in the room, and Julia would start violently shaking. Then, like a light switch, she'd be back to normal with no memory of any of it. After the evaluation, Gallagher attended her exorcism. At the ritual, she screamed and cursed at the priest, sometimes in Latin and Spanish. 3 men held her down, and she screamed in pain when sprinkled with holy water. Allegedly, she also levitated 6 inches off the ground for half an hour. Known as the Demon Murder Trial, the case of Arnie Cheyenne Johnson is the first known court case in the U.S. during which the defense attempted to prove that the defendant was not guilty by reason of possession. A year before Johnson stabbed his landlord to death, his fiance's younger brother began seeing a man with hooves and black eyes that appeared in his house at night. The demonic visions were accompanied by footsteps in the house, slamming doors, and voices that seemed to come from nowhere. He described the apparition as a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features and jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. The situation escalated into full-blown possession. David went into convulsions and bruises appeared on his wrists and neck. He shouted and hissed at the family in Latin. By this point, Arnie Johnson was staying with his fiancée to help David through the ordeal, and exhausted from sleepless nights, began to taunt and threaten the demons, telling them to take over him instead. Over the next few days, he went into a downward spiral, later saying that he had become possessed after seeing David's demon and looking deep into its black eyes. Johnson's behavior became increasingly erratic, and during a small party at their house a few months later, it all came to a head. According to the witnesses, Johnson suddenly went into a trance, growling under his breath, then walked slowly toward the landlord and stabbed him viciously in the chest multiple times. He was convicted and served a mere 5 years of his 10 to 20-year sentence. In 1906, Clara Shelley was a Christian student in Natal, South Africa. For some reason, she prayed and made a pact with Satan when she was 16 years old, and just days later was overtaken by strange impulses. She was repulsed by religious artifacts like crucifixes. She could speak and understand several languages of which she had no previous knowledge, and she became clairvoyant regarding the thoughts and histories of the people around her. Nuns reported that she produced horrible animalistic sounds, and she also levitated up to 5 feet in the air. Eventually, 2 priests were brought in to perform an exorcism. Shelley tried to strangle one of them with his stole, and over 170 people witnessed her levitating as the priest read scripture. Over the course of 2 days, the rites of exorcism successfully drove the dark spirits from her body.